to find great, follow me,
New listings. Whatever you're looking for, you'll find it on Yep. Yep has a range of great traders and suppliers. Those are artists.
let me take you to the painters.
There you go.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Funding and Scaling It webinar, proudly brought to you by Yep and powered by OnlineX. And for this specific webinar, I'd just like to say a big thanks to Funder, who have sponsored this particular webinar. So without further ado, just a quick introduction. So my name is Grant Creef, and I'm the Head of Strategic Partnerships for a company called Search Kings Africa within the paid Google marketing space, and I'll be the host and facilitator for this particular webinar. And I would like to introduce the three panelists who will be joining me and providing more insights, practical experiences around funding and scaling when it comes to business. So the first person I'd like to introduce is Eden of Funder. Eden, can you give me a 1-minute elevator pitch just in terms of the business so that everyone gets an overview of what you do?
Sure, cool. Thanks, Grant. Proud to be sponsoring this webinar. Hopefully people will learn a lot and get to engage with us. So we at Funder started the business in June 2018. Our sole mission and purpose is to grow SMEs. Essentially, they are the backbone of the South African economy. So we provide working capital to small businesses in the form of debt instruments into SMEs in South Africa, ranging from 20,000 Rand all the way to 5 million Rand in size and 3 to 12 months in term. We have developed our proprietary scoring algorithm, which allows us to provide funding into businesses in less than 24 hours by using minimal and alternative data. So that's what we do at Funder.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. Really looking forward to your insights today. And the next panelist I'd like to introduce is Audrey. Audrey is the CEO of System Logic Group. And Audrey, 1 minute on what the group is about.
Systemic Logic is a digital data innovation global disruptor. So we're in the business of tech, MVPs, data, predictive analytics. Basically, we actually help and support businesses, mainly in the financial services, drive execution using data, innovation, and technology.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Audrey. And again, also, I mean, with your robust experience, I think it's going to be great to get it, especially when it comes to the data side, because I think at the end of the day, we can't make decisions unless it's informed by actual quality data. And then our last panelist, our third and last panelist is Neil. Neil is within the private equity game, and he's the CEO of Avant-Garde Private Equity. Neil, from your side, give us a little blurb of what you're involved with. Neil, just do a little unmute there. That's a fine.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm a private equity fund manager for high net worth individuals as well as family offices. Looking at transactions ranging from venture capital opportunities all the way through to mid-cap private equity. So, you know, investment sizes ranging from R1 million all the way through to 50 million Rand. But very much on the equity side of the balance sheet.
Excellent. Brilliant. Thanks so much, Neil. And so I think just for everyone watching this webinar live, just want to share with you that YEP has also sponsored two 500 Rand Take-A-Lot vouchers for, at the end of this webinar, we're going to then award that to two of the attendees for this webinar. And so that's really going to be based on what I can see in the chat. And I'd really like to encourage you to ask questions throughout this webinar. And what I'll make sure I do is interweave that as we are going through particular topics to make sure that you get the most practical benefit from this webinar. So without further ado, let's jump straight in. I want to start with Eden. So the number one question that I'm asked, especially on LinkedIn by up and coming entrepreneurs, is I need funding for my business. They say, I've heard a message from someone, I've read a message from someone around their juice business, and they've said that they need funding really to take it to the next level, but they've got only a few customers. Is it necessary for every business to seek funding when they are in the infancy stage?
So look, I mean, we started Funder, ourselves. We bootstrapped the business. So I don't believe in getting funding very early on. I believe growing it organically, getting it to a point where the business can actually sustain any sort of debt instrument. I mean, Neil can talk more on the equity side, but in terms of debt, we need a little bit of track record and a little bit of traction. First of all, to understand, can the business take on the particular debt? Can the business pay back the debt? And is there enough margin in the business to sustain the debt that we are going to be putting in the business? So if you're saying if it's really infancy stage and there's not enough record on the business, you can't actually determine whether the business can actually sustain the sort of debt that we might be willing to put into the business. So me personally, on a personal level, I always believe that a little bit of organic traction is the best method to get off your feet. Some people always want to, scale the business as quickly as possible, but things don't take quick as always. There has to be hard work, and you just have to soldier on and kind of work the business to get to a point where you can actually scale it. So these things do take time, and people do get impatient, and we see a lot of business coming to us and say, okay, now I'm ready to take it to the next stage. But, from our humble analysis, we actually think that they should carry on a little bit more, grind it out. We like to say, get your fingers dirty, roll up your sleeves and carry on fighting. And then there's always opportunity for growth capital and expansion, whether it's through equity or debt or a mixture of both, whatever it is. But the actual core of the business is obviously growing revenue, creating a sticky product, engaging with your customers. Having that organic traction is definitely something that you need to start with, and then it's much easier to scale it once you have that traction.
I love that insight. Thanks, Eden. And I think I want to rope in Audrey here, because Audrey, from my experience, it really is interesting how, so we're taught that you can fund a business with debt and you can fund a business with equity, right? So investors contributing equity as well. But the one other non-romantic one that hasn't, made it on the front cover of a magazine is customer funding. The fact that you can actually fund your business with customers that you grow, like Eden was saying now, building a track record, letting that, be your source of funding in the beginning. And then when you are experiencing a shift, you then move into possible external debt or equity investment. So from your side, with your experience, also with the business incubation side of things, maybe just share your perspective, what you've seen to be a element that businesses and entrepreneurs need to be aware about as they are seeking funding and where they seek that funding from.
No, thank you, Grant. I do believe, and Eden's right, there's a combination of everything you've mentioned. So as an entrepreneur myself, and a lot of your participants today, you can have a combination of those who put in their own money as a startup. So one of the things I've done previously is the whole concept of angel investment and angel investing before actually pre-funding or pre-seed. And then you've got your own models of finding customers. So the funding through customer model is an interesting one, because if you're in a service industry, it's making sure you sign up that first contract, and then make sure your product actually stands the test of time. So what are you solving for in any business, whether you're building a product or whether you're actually building a service? You need to be quite clear on what the value proposition is and have a long-term vision, because when you're looking for funding, you first and foremost, you're selling a dream. I always joke and say, when I was building my business, I call myself the chief hustling officer. So it's a combination of putting my own money in. It's a combination of making sure that actually you sign up that contract. And more important, a combination of making sure that as you look to grow, look to diversify as well. So you talk about the incubator and the incubation business that we have. The services we started had an innovation component. Then realized that actually data was the new liquid gold. So you diversify and we added the data component. As we were servicing clients and serving those contracts, realized that actually the incubator component, having been an angel investor as well, myself, was critical to actually now leveraging and growing the business. Once you start building and adding on, interesting enough, you become attractive to that funding comes to you, whether from a debt equity component, you're able to now go and present a product, present a service, and get interest. While I was looking for funding as well, at the same time, I acquired a business to diversify. So you have to show you have skin in the game. But never stop. I mean, Ida and I know you guys' story with Funder, I love it. The many doors that you knocked and it took one person. Sometimes you just need one person to help you believe in that vision, and then you can layer it and add to it. That would be my approach on that.
100% agree. Thanks so much for that, Audrey. And I think then from Neil, from your side in the private equity game, you of course, am I correct in saying you have a natural bias to make sure that there is equity involved? Otherwise, you wouldn't be aligned to what Avant-Garde is really there for. So what is it that you're looking for specifically from private equity as an investor in businesses that are presented to you? What are the 3 factors that you normally look at that really help inform whether you consider this to be a private equity ready business?
Yeah, so look, I think a lot depends on the stage as to where the business is, but to try and give you a more generic answer for the listeners, clarity. I'd say the first thing I look for is clarity of strategy is first and foremost. Aligned to that is clarity of current market positioning of the business, and I'd say the third thing is is there a clear path in the in management's mind as to execution of the strategy. So I guess it is all within that category. Obviously, you get the generic check boxes like good management, good profits, good cash flows. I'm just trying to hone in on the more, I guess, on the less obvious fundamentals that I look for.
Yeah, I think that's very relevant in terms of, I mean, even something such as good management, right? Because business in itself is inherently uncertain. So making sure that you've got the right team and you've got the right people that deal with those obstacles and uncertainties and don't just back down. I think that's very relevant. And I actually just want to highlight, so we have one of our listeners, Anzani, that's asked specifically around the funding side in a situation where if you had the situation where you were expanding nationally, and I want to bring Eden in here in terms of what you focus on, because you mentioned you have a particular involvement in looking at their track record. For a business that wants to now expand nationally, say they've got a track record within a particular region, what would you look for in that business if they've now applied to you for the debt funding side of things to expand nationally?
Sure. So, I mean, we look at the business holistically. Our funding is completely unrestricted. So whether a business comes to me and tells me I want to buy stock, or whether a business comes to me and tells me I want to expand nationally, the actual purpose of the funding does not matter. We look at the actual business and what is important for the listeners to understand is when you apply for funding through an entity like Funder, we basically take 6 months. We take the last 6 months data. When I say data that we pull, we have different. We have over 100 different data sources that we pull data from. But let's talk about bank statements, for example. We take 6 months of the previous bank statement data, and we analyze the business based on the past to predict the future. So that's why I said it's always better to get a bit of track record and traction. So what we look for when we provide funding is we look for consistency of cash flow, meaning cash coming into the account on a consistent basis. We look for diversification of cash flow. We don't like too much concentration from potential debtors, meaning that if, let's say, there's a company that does the same revenue, two companies that have the exact same revenue, exact same operators running them, but the one has 15 different smaller debtors, which they pay them smaller amounts into their bank account. And there's another company that has only 2 big debtors that pay them essentially the exact same money, and the revenue is identical. We'll always go for the one with 15 different debtors, because what would happen in a business with this concentration risk, and something happens with one of your suppliers and they land up dropping you, that means essentially 50% of your revenue would be depleted. So we look for diversification of cash flow. We look for consistency of cash flow. Obviously, a credit record and a credit scoring is something that we, that is at the heart of debt, of any debt, whether it's formal or informal. So very important to keep your credit record clean. If there has been a bit of hiccups in the past, it doesn't mean that it'll stop you from getting credit, but it is a little bit harder. So always make sure you pay your creditors on time, pay your bills on time. That is very important on your, especially it's a small business, the director is the heart and soul of the small business. So it's not like a big corporation. The director's credit history and payment behaviors will reflect badly on the small business. So it's very important to note that even though these two things are very separate, it's your business and your personal capacity, essentially the jockey or the director is the heart and soul of the business. So his actions will affect the business. So we always want to see, obviously, good jockeys, clear credit score, great bank statements with great cash flows coming in. We want to see suppliers being paid on time. We want to see rentals being paid on time and up to date. So all these things that would essentially show us that this is the right jockey and the right business. And we underwrite and we analyze all this past data in order to give us a view, whether it be a 6, 7, 8, 9 months view on the business if we're going to deploy capital in that entity.
So what I pick up there, Eden, is that really there is the nature of the relationships that are being developed and formed within this business. And that can be your creditors, so people that you owe money to, and that can be debtors, people that your customers that owe you money, right? And that's just, to name a few. And Audrey, I want to bring you in here in terms of now, yes, you've got the relationships on the one side, but you've also got the behavior. You've got the behavior of the business and how they treat those relationships. Because at the end of the day, both from a private equity point of view in funding, as well as the debt funding side of things, it's not simply just a transactional interaction where, I want money, here it is, and then I'll see you when I pay you type of thing. There's more of a relationship driven approach to seeking particular debt and or private equity funders. So can you maybe just share some experience around what you've seen really, really work when it comes to an entrepreneur or business owner taking the relationship seriously when they actually seek those funding initiatives? Just unmute there quick.
The classic. Sorry, Neil. I too. I think Eden mentioned the point there around getting your house in order. And I'm going to use the analogy of data. Any business owner listening at the moment, everything you do, there's a footprint. And you mentioned something really right about the directors, male or female, in a small business. What is your history? What's the data that you leave behind? So when we come to relationships, that footprint builds on, whether it's your repayment of even your basic personal things, something as small as do you even pay your fines. You don't really want to create a space where you're questioned or your business relationships challenge the business on the basis of who you are. Now, when you move to how you build a business and the strategy and relationships, I think it comes and boils down to everything we do and how we engage. So if you map out your strategy, and if you're either going to cold call, so most of you, I encourage you, if you've got a product, none of us have built businesses without actually even going to cold call, never knowing who we're calling to try and hassle to get the business. How you position yourself, that whole elevator pitch is important, but also how you exit is also important. So don't go and make all these contacts and all these engagements and give yourself a high five and walk out, and then don't bother to close the loop. And closing the loop is something as simple as just even saying thank you for that engagement, and then following through with information that would be useful. Thank you for making time to meet myself and my partners or listen to my idea. And by the way, I appreciated ABCD feedback they provided, which I'm going to implement. So that exit positions you in a way that I will remember you, because I remember that the time we spent together was worth it. And I'll be curious to come back if I'm on the other side to understand more about your product or understand more about your needs financially. If you take it further on, a lot of us fail in businesses when we set it up because we spend too much time perhaps on one relationship, and you build that first client, that first contract that allows you, funny enough, to go and access more equity possibly, because that shows the track record. And while we're selling, we forget what it took to get to that first contract. So I think with relationships, the trick is treat every engagement and every hassle as if it's the only contract you've got, meaning you're really not going to dilute the services. So I refer myself as a chief hassling officer, because part of the relationships that one builds, you have to be genuine and authentic in making sure that you keep the hunger first and foremost from your side. Build the relationship to allow that two things to happen. Your relationship engagement has succeeded when you're running business, when there's a conversation that's happening about you and you're not in the room, because that's a referral. That's a conversation that triggers an opportunity. That's a conversation that gives you new business. That's a conversation that builds your track record and allows someone like Neil later to give you probably the money that you're looking for. So treat every relationship in itself as a conversion and an opportunity to go and seek more funding to scale your business.
Great, Audrey. And I think that still within that relationship sphere, I think the timing of when we start particular relationships is always very important. And people often have this seesaw approach over should I be getting debt? Should I be getting, equity? Should I be selling shares, in exchange for cash from private investors such as private equity? Is there this complete answer to exactly when a business should get debt and exactly to when a business should get private equity?
I think that again, it's back to the type of business and the model. So you've got businesses that start that are self-funded. And as you immediately start, you're accelerating so fast that you do need to get that the debt. You do need to actually get the equity to scale sooner rather than later. Then there are businesses that you do need to build a track record. So if I'm opening up a simple service business or a simple business with a product in a farm, etc., suddenly there's a demand for the product more so than I thought I could, and I can't fund it myself. Now you've got the buildup, and yes, the timing could be early enough. I would take the risk, because if you believe in your idea, if you believe in your product, if you believe in the sustainability of that, there is no formula that says wait until now you've sold X many units before you can go through. If you can see the growth coming, rather go and seek that equity sooner rather than later, because then you manage the risk of non-fulfillment on a product that perhaps would have the traction and build up. Then there are types of businesses where you do need to prove yourself first. So you could put your funding and perhaps get the initial equity and support coming on board. But you realize, actually, I do need a little bit more time to manage this. It doesn't mean you don't go and seek the equity. It means that you could start building a database of where to seek that funding and to allow you to scale. So I start having the conversations with funder or even with Neil earlier rather than later. Because if they're looking for a 6-month record in history, then it means that you need to be 6 months ahead of when you're looking for that funding, as opposed to 6 days before you're looking for that funding.
Agreed. And Neil, from your side, why is it that you wouldn't invest in someone that arrives to your office and says, hey, I've got this really great idea, this really great concept. It's the Uber for X. It's really great. We haven't started yet, but it's super, I promise you it's going to work. Why wouldn't you invest in that idea, in that concept?
Inability to articulate the opportunity. Simple as that.
And what do you find is that naiveness to it?
Sorry?
What do you find? Because I think entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs really get passionate about a particular idea and a particular concept. And if they haven't started or created a business out of it yet, what do you think is something that they should be considering as to why you wouldn't invest in them in the first place until they do that?
So beyond, when someone has to be able to articulate the product, where it fits in and why it will or shouldn't succeed. I think the second thing is numerics and profitability and commercials. If the individual can't give you a very good sense as to the margins, the cash flows, we spoke earlier a little bit about we just touched on it, but how the business potentially needs to be funded, its risk factors. Those are the sort of things you'd look for, and why there's a need for the particular product. So I mean, you're talking about a pretty early stage opportunity here, but I'd certainly say articulation of product, the need for the product, and numerics and profitability around the product, as well as ramp up to profitability. I think that's the other important thing. If you don't have a good sense of quite early in the conversation as to what is the roadmap to break even, you can lose your audience quite quickly.
Thanks for that, Eden. And I think Eden, Neil, and I want to bring in Eden here, because Eden, the element around when we are growing a business and what you see in terms of the historical data. To give you an example, an experience here at Search Kings Africa, we don't normally work with startups. And then the reason why we don't work with startups, and I'm saying startups, say within, that haven't had a track record of, say, 6 months, is because they actually haven't refined their offering yet, because there's so many iterations and experimentations that happen that then help them then pivot, refine, because as we know, there's so much uncertainty in business, and what we thought was going to happen naturally as you see types of customers interact with your business, it may then cause you to pivot. So how is it that then in your business, Eden, that you are in a level where you can look at the historical data, and so you understand kind of what direction they're going in? There's not too many iterations. They've not chosen their direction. How is it then that you look forward? Because I think that's the most important. How is it that you look forward then and consider what that potential growth is?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I think it's important to know that we built our business for scale. We like to consider ourselves as low touch credit, right? What I mean by low touch credit is really leveraging technology essentially and sticking to a certain model. Does the credit model tell me to fund the business, or it doesn't tell me to fund the business? We believe that startups, whether you think a startup is pre-revenue or post-revenue, maybe in the infant 6 months of the business, we can't differentiate whether a business has been operating for 10 years or whether a business has been operating for 6 months, because we require, let's say, 6-month bank statements. We plug it into our model. So this low touch element we don't have that hand holding approach where we speak to the client and we say, what are your growth ambitions? What are you planning to do? What is your profitability projected to be? So we like the way that we built our business is more for scale, and therefore we can't really differentiate between big businesses, small businesses, existing businesses that's been trading for 24 months compared to 6 months. We built our model and business in a way that we take the exact same amount of data and information from any business, and we run our own projections to see, will the business be around for the next 6 months? So for Neil, for example, obviously an equity investment is you have a lot more skin in the game. You need to analyze the business a lot deeper. You need to analyze the jockey, because you're essentially getting into bed with him for life type of thing. You know, that's the kind of mentality that you need to think about. With us, we only take like a 6 months view, or anyway 3 to 12 months. The average loan term on our book currently is just under 7 months. So the way we look at things is we say, in the next 7 months, based on the past data that we have, will this business be around? Will they carry on generating the same revenue that we have seen in the past with them? Are the debtors that they have on their current book going to carry on doing business with them? And will the business actually be able to pay us back?
Brilliant. And I think this is a perfect point then to pivot to then the scaling side of this conversation, because now that we've explored in our business what should be relevant at the particular time when it comes to whether it be debt funding, whether it be private equity funding, and then of course customer funding, especially in the beginning. Now we talk about scale, and my interpretation of scale is that scale allows you in your business and your whole team to do double the effort, or so to do double the output for the same amount of effort. And so it's ultimately around how do you leverage the particular tools and the systems in such a way where you don't have to spend until 12 o'clock in the evening every night because now you've doubled your revenue of your business. You can spend the same amount of time, but the systems and the tools are doing a lot of the hard yards for you. So I think, Audrey, from your side, in terms of what you've seen with the businesses that you've been involved with, as well as your own business, what do you find to be one or two very critical factors that you take into account when looking to scale or to continue the scale of your business?
It's a good question. I always say to startups when I meet with them is when you have a vision, dream to grow bigger than you are, and sometimes even look to expand beyond the geography you're in. Now, when you test that, one of the things as a startup listening or as a business in the middle of a decision, go, no go, just ask yourself a question. Are your systems, your processes aligned for that growth? Have you put in place the right governance structures? So because the quick test that I look at is, do you have a product or a process or a service that has potential to grow your revenue even more, double your revenue over time? Secondly, are you able to, or have you put in place systems that are able to optimize efficiencies? So you talk about how you spend less, but you actually do more. Optimize the efficiencies around that. And then thirdly, if you look at how you position yourself, you need to grow. Have you measured the extent to which your current process or product actually will reach maturity, meaning that actually I'll get to a point where no one is interested in buying that service or that product? And if so, can you diversify? So have your systems the design in a way that you can add on, because a scale component could be scaling with introducing new products, or you could scale by diversifying through even an acquisition, acquiring a similar or competing product that you bring on board. Yes, you might spend a little bit more, but you're now growing your team and growing the processes and growing your revenue in faster than you thought you would. So the one underlying factor always is the passion and the vision of the leadership team. So no one's going to fund somebody who thinks it's a very quick fix, a once off, and they don't really have a long-term vision. Secondly, position yourself as the one competitor that you admire that is probably 5 or 10 or even 20 times bigger than you are, and prepare yourself today to reach that goal, which means that you will invest in the governance processes, you will invest in a platform or system that allows that leverage, and you'll make sure that you're constantly scanning the market to see, can I look at an opportunity to acquire as part of my scaling strategy?
And Neil, from your side, when you're looking at a business, I mean, you know, you're not necessarily dealing with necessarily the startup space, but you're dealing with a lot more mature businesses, especially from a size point. So, I mean, what are the elements that you're looking for in that business when it comes to assessing whether they actually have adequately set up the business to scale?
You know, I think, you know, if we take the assumption that they've implemented the systems and processes and have the due personnel required, let's take that as a given. What we're really looking for is the scaling needs to be a clear route to market that's going to be effective and efficient, and potentially more effective and efficient than what the current methodology or route may be. So, for example, you may have a B2C sort offering, or a business that's designed for a consumer sort market, but the real scale in your business can happen through a corporate offering where you could onboard 1,000 customers in one fell swoop by having one corporate. So I'm just giving that as an example. So I think you know, well, it's really what we call route to market plausibility and effectiveness is number one. And then obviously to support that is leverageability of operations. Do the operations support that particular strategy?
Great. And Eden, I want to bring you in here and just quickly have an experience here that when I joined Search Kings Africa, there was a particular sales process. And when I joined, I then started using particular tools in our sales process to help manage in an automated way the discovery calls with customers, the qualifications of customers, really just to reduce the time spent by our sales team. So from your side, Eden, within the funder environment now, let's take a little step in the back end of your business. What are some of the actual tools that you are using right now in your business, your teams are using, that help them do more with less effort or the same amount of effort?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's night and day from how we started and how we really had to, you know, bootstrap the business, and we did things very lean, and we used a lot of free software and no code program to kind of streamline our business to where we are now, where, you know, we've built our own technology and sitting on, like, we've customized Salesforce and AWS to create this whole ecosystem where clients can obviously apply online with no human intervention, extracting data with no human intervention, plugging it into our model with no human intervention, and having essentially 85% of our credit process done automatically. So I think it's very different to where we are now, because now we obviously did the bootstrap and cheap way to understand what we need to build, you know. So when we started the business, we had very limited capital to either disperse into the market and kind of learn our business and see what our customers say about us and how we can actually launch a minimum viable product in the most effective way and learn from it. Or we could have deployed our capital to build the technology that will make us scalable. We chose to go the other route. We chose to go the very manual way to launch a product that we wanted to put out into the market and understand and learn from it. And back then we used to use a lot of like free tools such as Zapier and Trello and Canva. I mean, we did everything for no money. We built our whole business and all branding we did ourselves. I mean, our website was on Wix. We used to pay like 100 Rand a month just to build our website. Everything was done on Excel. I mean, the most expensive part of our business was our bank fees, which came to like 600 Rand a month. We didn't take a salary for the first 15 months. So we really slugged it out, and we really made sure that, you know, every single cent that has been generated in the business would go back into our balance sheet to carry on funding deals and grow. And when we decided to build our technology and really build for scale, we actually used to take our products and sit with our customers and show them and give them essentially like not a live version of our portal and let them interact with it. And we just used to sit at the back and understand how they walk through the website, how they log in, what's the user journey, what is the experience, are they enjoying it, where are the points where they kind of fall off, where the points where they don't understand. And obviously then we put in a lot of, we went out to the market to raise capital ourselves so we can build out this piece of technology, which now we are super scalable. Before then we weren't scalable at all because we used to do everything ourselves. It was very manual driven. And every time we used to bring more customers onto our book, we had to increase our workforce. So if our revenue was increasing, so was our OPEX was increasing at the same rate. It was tracking behind. Obviously, that's not scalable. Now that you've implemented some sort of systems, whichever systems might suit your business, but as soon as revenue grows and you know your operational expense starting to plateau, that's when you actually reach scale in a business. But it didn't happen overnight. That's what I'm trying to say. It can't happen overnight. You have to, I believe, you have to do things the manual way, the hard way, understand the business, understand every single element of the sales cycle, understand all the pain points that your customers are facing, and then build something instead of building something before, instead of building a system to scale before and taking that system into the market, because you don't have actually customer findings to build your business based on. So you might think that things need to go a certain way, but I'm always of the belief that rather launch in the most cost-effective way, put your product out there in the market, see what the customer wants, what the customer needs. And once you have that, a bit of traction, you can always go, Aubrey and Neil, you can always approach these guys and actually get funding to build this scalable part of your business, because you have shown progress of you've done everything manually and this has been working and we have achieved X with Y. Give us that additional funding. Let's kind of grow it together.
I think, Eden, that's a great point. The fact, and Audrey, before I bring you into this one, I think that for everyone listening, some of the tools that Eden mentioned. So for example, Zapier. So there's Zapier, there's another one called Integromat. So Integromat just did a rebrand to be called Make. And so if you Google Zapier, is Zapier, or Integromat or Make, whatever you name it, literally those platforms are there to help you automate a lot of the standard processes, such as if someone fills in a website inquiry form, you can then send them an email. If they fill in a type form, a form, then you do a particular action and record them in your CRM system. So I think, Audrey, from now going into that practicalities of tools like Zapier and Integromat, I think that what Eden mentioned there around rather do things manually in the beginning so that you understand what the actual process is end to end, and then start to not necessarily automate everything to enable you to scale, but automate 50%, automate 20%, because every little subsection of a process that you automate is going to allow you to do more with the same amount of effort. So what have you experienced, Audrey, in your business and the businesses that you've been involved with that really enable them to little bit by little bit move from that manual process to a automated or scaling process? Quick unmute.
Yeah. So I think Eden is describing a process where you've got a tech-based business model. And there, when you're building an MVP and testing it, because you need actually to make sure that actually the user experience and the demand, the whole issue around the supply and demand makes sense. So I think if your system and your platform is not working, you don't have a business, because then there's no fulfillment and the product won't work. So with that in mind, I support that component of it. When you look at systems that are not fully tech dependent, where you're not building a platform, there are different ways that you can actually manage that differently. So when I spoke about getting your systems and tools and processes, so if you're going to go out there and look for equity or look for funding, you need to make sure that you find basic financial management is actually designed effectively. You need to make sure that actually you're running the business in a way that you would have an external auditor look in and say, actually, the business is sound. So position yourself for success in the processes that you put in place. And if it's a product that you've got, position yourself in a way that actually from a delivery point of view, you know where to access those customers, know your customer. So the incremental approach most certainly works, and utilizing free support systems out there. I've talked a lot about getting your finances right. Most of you will know, if you look at Xero, so when products on board to allow your budgeting and management systems, because for many entrepreneurs and startups I've found that there are two types of entrepreneurs out there. Those who've got an idea that they've ideated and they're excited about it, and those actually understand how to take that idea and commercialize that idea. And sometimes it's not the same person. So you need to also be able to say, how am I going to make money before you can scale and before you can even look for money? What is it? The value proposition I mentioned earlier. How are you going to make money? And if you do have the product, then where am I going to find the support for that product? If I look at Funder, and it's a good point, Eden, around the journey that you've taken to grow and being quite savvy and being quite pirates, finding free tools on board. That's one exciting model, but you yourself know when you did go around knocking on doors trying to find that funding, you faced immense challenges. And what I'm saying is a combination of that before one person says yes. So have the vision, and perhaps there's an opportunity to even say, surround yourself with people, because entrepreneurs sometimes are more than one. When you're 2 or 3 of you, I've found startups that come, it's an ideator, it's a person who can build some tech, they're not fully a CTO. Then I always ask them, so where is the business-minded person? Who has the contacts? Who's going to be knocking on those doors, the relationships that we spoke about? So the growth component is also a combination of not just the idea or the technology that you're testing to take to market, but also having what I call a street-smart, street-wise partner who understands the markets and is the person that you'll put in front of the investors to engage. Because some businesses I have funded as an angel investor because of that individual, not the CTO, because I trust that the CTO will test and try and make sure that the product works because they've given me a prototype. I trust that the ideator is passionate around what they're doing, but the person who will generate the conversions into a sale or generate the conversion into accessing a meal or a bank and making sure that we're set for success, in more cases, that's the person I'm interested in those startups as well.
Brilliant. And so, Neil, are you still there? Cool. So, Eden, I'm going to go then to you in terms of the one question that someone's actually just asked now, specifically around scaling, is how much do you have to justify? Oh, you there, Neil? Brilliant. Okay, great. So, Neil, from what you've seen in terms of a business's life cycle, at what point does a business justify moving, like Eden was saying earlier, around they moved then to a serious system like Salesforce as an example? And just to give the listeners an understanding, if you don't know, Salesforce is a customer relationship management platform, but it's insanely more complicated and comprehensive than just being a CRM, and it's a huge investment. So Neil, from your side, when a business is in a particular life cycle where they now need to make that shift, where they need to make a large investment in a platform, in a particular piece of software, such as a Salesforce CRM, what would you consider to be an important or important factors in deciding or informing them to make the right decision for the business, given how big that investment is?
Oh, right. So, the first point is, how integral is that part of the operation to the business. So, it's quite interesting. Something like Xero as an accounting package is really brilliant. You can, at a pretty low cost, go quite far in an accounting system these days, which you couldn't do in prior years. So, something like Salesforce, you're only going to do if you're really running a very diverse sales team, and again, with strong KPIs, where there's a lot of follow-up required, where there's a lot of client touch points so that the whole organization can see them. So, I think you've really got to be pretty careful with taking on new systems. Migrating onto new stock systems can really take a long time, can set a business back. I get the sense a lot of the businesses we're talking to, stand to correction, aren't quite at that point just yet where they need to be spending big amounts on complex systems. So also the way the world is now set up, there's so many ways of accessing these systems through the cloud, that there are brilliant businesses where you can, just for a monthly subscription fee, access the full bank sheet instead of having to own the actual products and files themselves. So you need to shop around for these cloud type businesses. You can access Salesforce now through cloud type offerings. So that's definitely something to look at.
Great. And I think this is for everyone listening. I think that when you're in a position, when you're looking to scale your business, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a massive shift of scale, it can be a small iteration, a small improvement in a particular process in a specific department in your business. I think just the one thing just to be mindful of when you are making a choice of whether to go into a far more comprehensive system, just be careful and mindful of consultants, of implementation consultants that really do make money off of time that they sell to implement the particular tool that helps you then to scale your business. Because a lot of the times, if you actually implement something that you have to rely on an independent consultant to help you with, then you naturally marry that particular consultant, and they, in one form or another, actually become extremely critical in your business continuity. So just be mindful of that. And like Neil was saying now, what Eden and Audrey were saying earlier, use the platforms that are available that you can subscribe, and you can have a free trial and use the free version, and really get, like Eden says, get your hands dirty so that you really understand the mechanics of what it takes, and not necessarily just outsource it to someone else and then depend on that other consultant or person, especially when you're at a stage where you can't afford to waste or to overpay in the scaling aspect of your business. So we've only got 5 minutes left, and I just wanted to round this up now. And from Eden, from your perspective, from what we've discussed today, from a funding and a scaling point of view, what is something that you want to leave with everyone listening today that you've learned as an entrepreneur that you really need to be conscious of, whether it be within the funding or scaling or both?
So I'll make it quick. I think that, like Audrey touched earlier, we couldn't access funding for a lot of times. We were sitting with over 50 rejections before the first individual actually took a shot on us and provided us with funding. So I think funding for your business is one of the most critical things that you need. It's the fuel for your business, whether it be equity, whether it be debt, whether it be a mixture of both, whatever it may be. Funding is the most critical thing that you'll need for your business, whether it's to start it or grow it or to scale it or sustain it, whatever it may be. So I think it's important for everyone's listening, whether you're a small business, big business, a technology business, a transport business, logistics business, whatever business you are, it's very important to make sure that all your ducks are in a row, your business is clean, and your business is actually geared to take on some sort of funding, because we believe that every business will need funding. So whenever we approach a business to take funding, it's not that the product isn't right, but the timing might be wrong. So the product that we have and the product that all the panelists have it's something that every business will need. So you need to make sure that whether you're starting or you're down the line with your business, just make sure your business is kept separate from your personal life, treated as its own entity. It's your baby. Take care of it, keep it clean, make sure you pay your debtors, make sure you're up to date on all with your creditors, make sure you continuously onboarding new debtors onto your business, get more and more business, grow steadily. And yeah, that's probably the one biggest piece of advice, is just keep your business clean and make sure that it's always ready to take on funding, whether it be equity, debt, whatever it may be, because you will need it one day to grow.
Great. Thanks so much for those insights, Eden. And Audrey, on your side, so if you were to put it in a minute, what would you want to recommend and just share to everyone that they need to pay attention to in their businesses going forward?
So one quick one, you'll never not need funding. All businesses today continue to need funding. So once you start and get on that wheel, make sure you're always able to get that funding. The second thing is, don't forget your creditors. Cash flow is king. So as we start businesses, you sometimes are worried too much about accessing the fund and making payments, and you are not pushing to collect what is owed to you. So cash is king. Don't forget your creditors.
Short and sweet. I love it. And also SARS. Hey, make sure that one of those creditors is SARS, because you don't want SARS getting up to you. And I hear the good news from the budget speech that they've reduced the income tax rate for companies from 28% to 27%. So that's pretty exciting. So looking forward to businesses enjoying that relief as well. Neil, on your side, what would you like to leave everyone with based on your robust experience in the private equity game that they need to be aware of?
Yeah, I'd say, look, there are two messages arising from the discussion for the delegates. Firstly, private equity is very much more about partnerships and being involved in the business with yourselves. So, I think running your own business can be quite a lonely existence, and involving a private equity partner, if it's myself or competitors, you need to select. It'd be good if you could select someone that can really add value to your business. And it's important to test that. So if you've got a retail type entity, does this investor understand the space that you're in? Can they open doors for you? Can they add the value? Because the private equity investor also needs to sleep, eat, drink the business with you. So that's number one. I think the second thing, and it's aligned to that, is if you look at the three of the panelists, see if I can include Grant in that, Dan, Audrey, and Grant. I mean, I don't really know them, but just how they understand and how they are in tune with their own businesses and are passionate about them. So if you take Dan, if he was approaching me for equity, I can see straight away as an example, because this is a hard forum. I can't see you guys behind the screen there, But I can see he knows credit. He's got a good feel for. I can see if we left him on this forum, he'd be speaking all night about debtors, cash flows, etc. So whether that's my game or not, I can't. It's interesting, but I can see the guy's on top of his world, and he can talk it all day. Audrey, in her space, you can see it. She understands the systems, the processes. And I'm quite sure if we got to chat about Grant and Google searches and how to optimize them, it'd be a similar discussion. So I think for the participants, if they can maybe take that away, and I think that's what attracts investors. That's what it would attract me, because you end up. That's what it's about. It's about that passion. That's really what I look for, is that passion. So that's my parting message.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Neil. Really appreciate those thoughts and that perspective. And to everyone listening, one last point from my side in terms of lessons learned from today. I really think that if you're in a position what I like to do is I really like to follow other people. I like to read particular books around what people have already done that I'm interested in. So if you'd like to get a hold of any of these panelists, make sure that you search them. All of them are on LinkedIn as well, and really make sure that you start following particular people even on that platform that relate to particular areas of interest, and especially when it comes to entrepreneurship or AI or any particular topic, it's all available on LinkedIn, which I'm a big proponent of. So make sure that you start doing that so that you can learn, like Neil was saying, in the perspectives of other people, and so that you're not alone, that you're not trying to figure everything out by yourself. And I mean, I said in the beginning of the session that we're giving away 2 vouchers, and we are giving away 2 500 Rand Take-A-Lot vouchers thanks to Yep. And the 2 people that are our winners based on their comments and the engagement, I'd like to congratulate Anzani Matebula as well as Elise Leroux. So thank you so much for the comments and the engagement from everyone. And a massive thanks to Online X for powering this webinar in association with Yep. And of course to Funder for sponsoring this. And like I said, reach out to any of us on LinkedIn. We're all active and publicly available there as well. So thanks everyone, and wishing you all the best. And don't forget, we've got the last webinar next week on the 2nd of March at 4 p.m. And that is really going to be a great one. It's all around, of course, in the business environment as well. So see you then.
Want to find great? Follow me.
New listings. Whatever you're looking for, you'll find it on Yep. Yep has a range of great traders and suppliers.
Those are artists. Let me take you to the painter.